thanks for your time, everyone, and thanks, Paul, for having me. I'm Dominic with LeanIX, actually. LeanIX, for those who not know us, is a software as a service company for enterprise architecture management and much more. Founded out of Germany, out of DHL, actually 10 years ago, and now a worldwide company. I'll share some ideas in a second. But let me quickly reflect on my personal journey when I read this. Hey, I talk about software architecture here, and what we just discussed after the other session around trade-offs and around non-functional requirements and around people. This is also valid still. Like 15 years ago, I started to think about software architecture, actually highly inspired by Bas Clemens and Casman. And it's interesting how this now evolves. I believe it's still a very, very great book to learn about software architecture in the first place. So LeanIX, as I said, it's a software as a service company. We're proud to be working right now with more than 600 customers. But even more important, and we did a recent mathematical exercise, is to learn how many people we affect in their daily life. If a customer of ours have like 10K users, it means to some extent we are changing and affecting the way people are using and perceiving IT, and this is really a great feeling. So what we're trying to build, I mean, enterprise architecture is where we're coming from, but how we explain this topic to non-technical people is around Google Maps. So it's around like, hey, we want to show you how your IT helps your business. We want to show you how business capabilities and processes and value streams can be like a guidance towards, hey, why do we have different IT systems there? Why do we have now redundancies after a merger? How do our techies next corner influence what we are doing? And it's interesting if you think about the major pattern behind our work today is, yes, you can talk to Forrester and to Gartner and talk about ROI, but in the end, it's quite simple. Complexity around software is the key problem that we are seeing at corporates all over the world. And obviously, people want to think about agility and cost and quality. And if we can help them to manage their complexity, they can focus on the business outcomes. And it's super interesting and quite adding to the process that we just started to say, hey, complexity, the understanding in the industry changed dramatically over the last years. When I started in enterprise architecture, I have seen many people still counting application and counting interfaces and other things. And obviously, the more you go into companies, the more you realize there are different patterns to think about your software. And it's not about just counting, it's about understanding how things interface. And it's also about understanding the different factors that emerge amongst your landscape. Cost of change, cost of integration, and then also the way your company embrace change, whether the company wants to go fast, whether the company is in a business where it goes slow. And in the end, comes back to trade-offs, on a functional level to understand what is the right architecture for me to design. And fueling this flywheel a bit further are some of the trends that we see out there. So whether it's API economy, whether it's citizen developers, which is obviously a very interesting topic for every architect, and obviously whether it's software as a service like ourselves as well, to understand how I can integrate it and understand how I manage risk and procurement and all those things. It's only adding to this complexity that each and every company out there perceives today. And to go a bit deeper into the topic of value stream thinking and then also our very own journey, if we double down now on building software, then it's 2022 and you don't need to teach people anymore that DevOps is a thing, and project to product, the industry advanced quite fast right now. But the beauty around this topic of value stream management and value stream thinking is that it addresses this reality that many initiatives are still failing and data is still very, very much dispersed in silos. And obviously different companies are in different stages on the maturity there. And you can think about analysts, what they want, but it's quite interesting to look into Gartner and look into other analysts to see how they project a massive change around we will think about DevOps tool chain and maximizing flow and really getting the most out of the value streams. So it's really a bit like a start of an era to think about developing software even different. So let me skip this part and just invite you again to follow me on the journey, being here in some kind of elevator. To me, this is a really, really nice job of an architect on all the different levels today, that you have so much fun talking to different people, translating messages to developers, to executives and everyone in between. And obviously, I will come back to this in the end. A lot about the topics that we see are about people in the end and only about technology as an afterthought. So let's go back more or less 10 years and let's reflect on how we actually started our journey as LeanIX into the enterprise architecture market. And to follow me on this journey, you need to think about enterprise architecture 10 years ago as a ivory tower discipline, as a discipline which was obviously there in companies, but often was quite detached from the technical and from the business reality, often also seen as a gatekeeper. And when we started to enter this market, it was like, can we democratize enterprise architecture? Can we make this topic in a very opinionated way available to many people? And obviously this business thought leads to very, very interesting technical consequences. And you might have seen this picture before. It's still always compelling if you think about running something new, a new idea. It doesn't matter which technology you're using to get started on this. So LeanIX actually has been started on a LAMP stack, really, really straightforward 10 years ago. And also this picture has been shown a million times right now in all the different communities. Yet reflecting and thinking it through as an architect, you tend to embrace the notion of an MVP and you tend to dismiss so many things that you see out there as an MVP. Again, this is the most beautiful example when you think about an MVP. It's not about building a car by starting with the wheel and then adding another wheel and then adding the chassis and then step by step adding more. It's about thinking about the car in terms of mobility, in terms of I want to go from A to B and what is my right way to go there. And this very, very simple idea is a major pattern that we have still today, more or less in every architecture or product discussions, to say how can we use technology to validate some of our ideas and what is really the essence that we are trying to do here. How this translates into the topic of architecture and enterprise architecture management is on different levels. So if you read TOGAF by the book, then you learn that enterprise architecture is about data models and about mapping data. And we entered the market with a very, very opinionated and almost cruel idea to say, we don't want to talk about a data model. We want to talk about value out of this. So for the first 5 years in LeanIX history, we only had like a hard-coded data model. And only step by step, when we clearly understood with our customers how to approach it and how to create value out of this, we added the functionality to enhance our data model. And still we realize on a daily basis that many customers who are not mature in enterprise architecture, they are not ready for dealing with a data model. They need to talk about value first and only then about technology. And very similar, the journey of LeanIX towards a scaling technology continued. So when we talk nowadays about our architecture, quite clearly it's even more complex than what we see here right now. But the clear understanding to say the beginning of LeanIX don't care about scalability as an aspect and don't care about other things like stability as an aspect. It's all about usability and validation. And then obviously with an advanced architecture with microservices, you can step-by-step level up in all of these aspects. In usability, by moving from a very simple page to a state-of-the-art application. In scalability, by decomposing this to different teams. In stability, by using the right technologies. And really interesting is to say, what does it do with your company? You're moving fast and you want to embrace this architectural concern of scalability, but obviously you can go dramatically wrong. You can go wrong and say, here, I want to do microservices right now, and all of a sudden you have more microservices than developers. And obviously also there, you then want to go a step back and say, hey, what's your line as a company to solve this architectural problem that you're having, which is around usability, scalability, stability, and more things. And it's not about replicating someone else. It's really doing architecture work and understanding how the system is fitting best for your developers and for your requirements. And similarly, the pattern of thinking about new developments from a user perspective has been tremendously important, and is tremendously important today, as you see on the right-hand side. And again, an architect can go very, very deep and write a concept and write another concept and write another context, and then half a year later you validate it and customers say, oh, this is not really buildable. The skill of expressing an idea as a picture has emerged as a clear architectural discipline at LeanIX. And it's not something where we demand an architect for. Actually, the LeanIX organization doesn't have any architects. It's more like we want to teach this skill to product managers, to customer success people, to engineering leads, to say, let's express ideas in mock-ups, in pictures, where the user is first. And very, very often it has served us really well to validate ideas before actually building it. And it's a bit similar pattern when you come to other aspects, like how you want to think about prioritization. Again, we, for example, moved quite late to systems like Jira. In the beginning, really want to express user stories very focused. We brought in patterns like feature toggles very, very fast to take customers on the journey with us on some beta features, getting rapid feedback, and even going so far to provision the same application during a crucial time in 2017 twice to users, where they could follow us on a very complex system migration, give us feedback, and always help us as a very, very close feedback loop. Now, I know that architects love to think about reusability and abstraction. And it's this one pattern which you learn out of high school to say, hey, you need to embrace abstraction. Reusability is a gold standard. You really want to go in there and do things once. And it's super interesting that practice and craftsmanship tell you that this is, in many cases, just not true. We learned, and we still learn today, that usability and flexibility is more important than reuse and abstraction. And it again comes down to this topic of value streams and thinking about what makes you fast on which level. actually this generic syncer that you see here on the left-hand side was like a long-term effort in engineering to say, well, let's prepare right now for all the integrations that we want to do in the future. We want to solve it once and then it's done. Actually, we implemented this idea only once or twice, and then we understood this is not helping us. We talk about technology and we don't talk about user value. And with every single change, we risk issues even of not related users. We heavily evolved this concept technically, but it still is an issue to understand from an integration point of view, what can you reuse and what can you, or what should you not reuse. And in the other areas, it was very, very similar. Often usability and flexibility is the key principle in there. So fast forward to 2022.
Hey, just to interrupt there, Dominic. Richard had a question that was, how do you deal with application modernization? You need to do whatever it does now and more.
It's an interesting point, which we actually learned only a bit later. And I believe quite funnily, every single Big Bang migration project that we had, but the one central one failed. So the one central one, maybe going back in here, you can think about it, an application modernization project. And it was like a risk your company project for us. Essentially in 2015, 2016, we learned that the old architecture, this like technology, wise PHP, etc., is just not scaling anymore. And we took the very brave decision to not try to do this step by step, but rewrite the entire platform. And in this time, the business did not stop. Existing customers asked for new features. We actually even onboarded our largest customer in this time. And what we learned in there, obviously, was that patterns like involving customers and even some extreme hyper alignment mode internally. So at one point, we even broke out of Scrum cycles and really aligned with all major stakeholders on a single day was key for realizing such a major project. But my main message is that this worked once in our company history, and for many other things, it's a really, really hard thing. So today, what we are trying more to embrace is not something like renew this service, which has been there, but actually step by step migrate it into the right direction. Obviously, you cannot solve this issue of feature creep via technical debt full-time completely, but as a pattern, we try to evolve the landscape and not to change things too dramatically those days. Not sure if this was a long answer, not sure if it answered all the aspects.
I thought it was great. I think the ongoing question of modernization versus debt is interesting because they're not the same thing, and definitely would like to dig into that with you. But I'll ask a follow-on question as you progress. I don't want to interrupt your flow too much. Richard said yes, though.
Cool. Thanks so much. And happy to make myself also available afterwards if you have any other questions on this. Happy to discuss. Good. Now let's move 10 years forward. And obviously in this 10 years of scaling, a lot of people have come to the company, a lot of customers have joined, a lot of things changed. And all of a sudden we find ourselves as a global company with like so many people that rely on us on a daily basis, with like different engineering teams, engineering sites, which to some extent were acquired, which to some extent were strategically built up, and also with a lot of topics around automation, because clearly the one topic in enterprise architecture which we observed over all the years was everything that you can gather from other systems, why would you ask people to enter it manually? And it started with something like a business process management integration. It continues with a highly used integration to ServiceNow from ITSM, but it also goes into issues like bringing own lifecycle data and even technology reference in the SaaS world. And obviously the automation is something fueling a lot of technical complexity that we now need to serve for our customers. And I don't want to like lie or put like a too one-sided picture in here. It's posing problems and it's posing issues to the companies. So this is a message actually last year, which we sent out to some of our customers saying, hey, we need to change our roadmap. We currently have issues on technical topics like CDN and performance. What emerged as part of the, to some extent, architecture is that being open to our customers and going down to this level with our customers has always been key for building trust. And the value stream goes so far to say, if we can provide transparency to the customer, what's going on, they can relate. In the end, we are talking to architects, and in the end, they all know the challenges that a SaaS architecture at scale gives. And it's interesting to embrace this thought that actually the customer communication, technical customer communication, is part of your development value stream as well. And it's super interesting to see how fast theory and the software development community evolved over the last years. And quite frankly, it has had some very, very high implications on the term software architect. Again, mentioning that LeanIX doesn't have a software architect, and we see it in many companies challenged as a role, though obviously the topic of architecture doesn't go away. And to some extent, if you look into team topologies and the team types that emerged here, to some extent, obviously, this is architecture. You want to build your teams in a way that they optimize for their purpose. A stream-aligned team optimizes for the value stream. If it's owning like the part of a value stream around checkout, it wants to understand how a customer embraces a checkout process, wants to optimize exactly for this process. An enabling team is about enabling other teams. So maybe infusing technical knowledge, maybe just supporting with a framework. It's really about my existence is built on working with other teams. Complicated subsystem team is, I believe, a very clear embracement of very deep architectural thinking. Because if you're, for example, dealing with some deep machine learning issue, then you are not like directly part of the value stream from a user perspective, like a stream-aligned team. But obviously, it's about providing this knowledge and this trust in the people to say, how are you developing your system? API first, how are you serving others? And then obviously the concept of a platform as well, to say, when is reuse, like for multi-tenancy management in our case, the right thing to do? And how do we, for example, ensure that practices like CI/CD and others are really, really scaling over the company? And another way to think about this is empowering teams. And again, it's not about like unifying this architectural thinking into one person's. If you read the great book about empowered teams, you learn that goal is to give people the context to build problems in way customer love. Goal is to inspire them to provide valuable solution, to provide usable solution, feasible and viable. And all of a sudden we are back in the trade-off topic to say, good, a usable solution is fine, but if it's not viable because of regulations, or it's not feasible because I can never address the amount of stability that I need, it's directly the trade-offs that you want to establish in there. And obviously trust between people and changing the role of leadership in this topic is something we actually learned in the talk before as well. To say, if we want to build a system nowadays where it's really addressing the business problem, then part of leadership is to enable people doing this. Now, this is the one way to look into this. What we learned over all the years is that empowering teams is not a switch goal. It's not something that you switch on and that now you're there. It's a constant two-way traffic. And in the absence of an architect, it's about getting people out of their comfort zone. It starts with things like on-call engineers, like you ship your code, you run your code, you wake up in the middle of the night if this fails, which is obviously not the most preferred way of an engineer, but people are embracing it. It continues with understanding what is the business context of a decision that you're taking. And for example, we brought a new product into the market, and obviously all of a sudden we used our systems in a different way. One way to embrace the communication with the engineers here was to say, this is the way the business is working. And we step by step want to bring our engineers in a direction where they clearly understand it. And in the same box, also the advance on how well do we develop software fall. And Accelerate and the DORA research driven by Google is a great book, and I can only recommend it to everyone who have not read it today. Not that it is now a gold standard, a direct way to measure how good or not good our software development is. But for the first time, we clearly get some evidence-based insights on how well we are regarding stability and how well we are regarding throughput. Mean time to recovery and failure rate is all around stability. Do I manage to serve my customers in the most stable way that they deserved? Lead time and deployment frequency is obviously about how fast am I to do new things. And it's not about saying that optimizing one or the other is good. The combination, obviously, it's important. If you deploy thousands of times a day and your failure rate is like 50%, obviously your customers are not happy. But either if your failure rate is 0%, but you don't ship any new features, same here. Again, it's trade-offs. And this is actually something which we are doing for our own, but also for our customers right now, to say, can we help them calculating those DORA metrics in a very, very effective way? And again, it's interesting to observe who is asking for this, because there's where people meet. Our most advanced enterprise architects, they ask for things like DORA. They ask for things like, hey, give me a communication base with my technical people to understand, are we doing the right thing or not? And obviously, advanced engineers, mature engineers, they ask for the same as well. They want to sit down with their teams in their retrospectives and reflect, are we getting better and are we not getting better? And obviously, it's not about just pushing data out there, but to really understand how people react and change based on this data. And similar patterns you can see nowadays with other aspects as well. If you talk about empowered teams, then obviously it's not only about stability, and it's not only about adding features. It's also, for example, about compliance. And also there, what we did quite heavily, quite early, is to say we want to educate our development teams on compliance. Obviously, things like GDPR or something, you must not host customer data of a US customer in Germany or vice versa, but also things like meet your engineering teams where they are. So Snyk, for example, in this case, used by our own company, it's a great product in recognizing CVEs and others, but as an engineering team, I want to be as closely informed as possible on what is important for me and what's not. So adding in some vulnerability classes which are aligned with your security officer, and then bringing those data either into a UI in a gamified way that people can challenge themselves, or even better, into the place where the devs are anyways, Slack in our case, is definitely helping the developers to be more efficient and to embrace these architectural aspects as well. And Log4Shell, we posted about this, so if you haven't read it, maybe you want to Google this. Is a great, very, very concrete example for this. Because the one thing is to understand the occurrences of something like Log4Shell based on discovery. This is one thing, but even more appealing, the way that we aligned within the engineering community was super amazing to see, to very quickly establish a reporting to say, where did we embrace this topic already, to clearly point people to say, hey, here you need to look, and here might be something deeper to analyze. For example, on Monday, as we mitigated this on Saturday, it's again super interesting to see how you can address an architectural concern like security in a decentralized way by bringing things together and communicating to people. And the final aspect and thought that I want to share on architecture nowadays is the thought of a platform. And we had the honor to host Gregor Hopp last year on our own conference, and it's still a very, very appealing concept to me if you think about platforms. And a platform obviously can be something that we develop ourselves, can be something like AWS or Azure or some machine learning framework that you are developing. And the thought to say in the end, you want to build a floating platform has some very revealing properties from an architecture point of view. And on the one side, clearly, it means, hey, you need to optimize your code continuously, not only because of technical debt, but also because there might be very, very much easier things to do it in 2022 than in 2020. And on the other hand, it fits quite nicely to this sort of an MVP. For example, if a platform doesn't have a certain property now, today, maybe you just build it yourself. And if you throw it away like 5 years later or 2 years later, it's fine because you managed to address a business concern with it. And again, this doubles down on this topic of reusability right now, but also put the business aspect before the platform to say the short-term thinking, how do I create value for my user, and the long-term thinking, how do I invest into a scalable architecture, go hand in hand. Now, I mean, obviously those were just some topics, and a lot of them were about modern software development, but I believe you embraced that architectural concerns are, at least at LeanIX, part of modern software development. And we don't have this role of an architect, but we have people thinking about architecture and driving it forward. Now, some messages that I would love to leave as a takeaway, and also as inspiration for connecting further, is even if you think about your value stream in a very, very simplified way, and even for us as a software as a service company, this particular way of depicting it, like support, ask for customer feedback and get bug requests, engineering solves things, and then customer success understands customer satisfaction. Even this very simplistic view is already super challenging and needs constant optimization. And even with great tools like in the pipeline, still on the boundaries of the pipeline, it's where the fun begins. Because engineering or product management make their decision based on local data, based on a not full understanding that the customers are screaming for more performance. Customer success made their decision on local data. They assume that software development is capable of doing something like this or is not capable, and bringing custom solutions. And also the leadership, they rely on a tedious data gathering to actually understand, are we on a good track or not. And obviously, if you think about a modern CTO, yes, every company is a technology company those days, then this is a business problem that people are talking about. So, and it gives like a very, very positive view on architecture as a discipline, because what we learned is that thinking about a value stream is not a technical thing for us. It's about understanding how to fuel our business, how to bring software fast to market, how to make sure that we can have great user experience, how to run it as stable as a customer deserves, and also how to embrace that we are in a world where IT talent is really, really scarce, and provides them with a great place to work where they have the responsibility, but where they also have the technology which makes it fun for them to work with. And actually, this is what, if you allow me, the quick advertisement slot that we now build next to our enterprise architecture system. So a very, very dedicated system to product teams around value streams, where you see a lot of those things that are just addressed in there. And obviously, we would love to engage on things in this direction, how it fits to your view on modern architecture, especially when also the notion of value stream and value stream metrics is so heavily maturing nowadays. And it's interesting that many of our customers right now, from an enterprise architecture point of view, they clearly embrace that joining forces with their software development and product IT colleagues in the end makes a difference in enterprise architecture. It's about faster time to value from an enterprise architecture perspective, because I can understand technology way, way faster. It's about detection and mitigation. So our main talks about Log4Shell were not with the CIOs of our customers, it was with their CEOs of customers. And then obviously about architectural alignment as well. So the final thought that I would love to leave with you, and then either jump into a quick discussion or leave you some minutes before the next talk, is I want to summarize value stream thinking for me, and clearly have learned that I'm coming from an architecture point of view as well. In the end, it's about those three things. It's about products, which translates into understanding and teaching people what we are doing for the customer. It's about people everywhere. It's about people in your company. It's also about people at other companies which you're engaged with, for example, with honest and trustful communication, or with very early mock-ups as feedbacks. And obviously, it's about embracing technology in there as well, and making sure that automation and all the other great things that we nowadays have from the cloud make a difference into our value delivery as well. So if I may ask for a quick favor, then maybe the one or the other just might want to open the QR code in the end. We do have actually a test system which we put out there, is also for us as a company clear journey to say sales and how people engage with technology vendors nowadays is different. They don't want to talk like sales guys, etc. They want to try software, they want to use software for themselves. Again, to some extent, an architecture and value stream decision. So the one or the other wants to give it a try, what we are trying to build there, would love to get your feedback on this as well. And with this, Paul, maybe back to you, and I'm not sure whether there are more questions now to take.
Okay. If you have a question for Dominic, please go ahead and put it in the question and answer question panel, and I will read it out. I think there's an interesting question. Oh, there's one just kind of house cleaning. What was the book you mentioned? Google book that you mentioned?
It was Modern Software Architecture, and I'll just go quickly back in here, and maybe I can post it somewhere in there as well. Otherwise, I would just do it like this and actually leave it open. Is it about this guy, or is it about the DORA metrics?
No, I think it was the Google book. Yeah, I think it's DORA related.
Yeah, the Google book is called Accelerate. Just Google for Accelerate and software engineering, or just Google for DORA nowadays, DOAR. I believe there you find tons of information as well.
Yeah, you know, so the problem, I think there's another question here that is, again, it's all about this shared identity. Now, I'm really excited about the next presentation as well, which is from RDoc, which obviously you guys, I love talking to architects from the different vendors that deal with architects, because it's a, you know, there's all these different views of the world. And of course, as a bit of BOK, we have an entire tools section that's all about how do we understand the tools we use and which ones solve which architect problems. Some is about decision rights, some's about value stream. But there's this question, and I see this all the time. We love, I see this in the Azure and the Amazon well-architected frameworks as well. And then you throw DORA in there, and then you throw, you know, and we really talk about engineering outcomes without translating them to value stream outcomes. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the question. The person who asked the question, David Slight, also put in an answer, but a tool answer, which is he's well known for, and a very cool one. But I want your, you know, I want to get your thoughts, because I think that I didn't see that. I didn't see how DORA became value stream based.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And actually, maybe as a quick advertisement, the Value Stream Consortium and people like Steve Pereira and everyone who are driving this, it's super interesting to see how fast this discipline is maturing. And yes, you're absolutely right. In the end, people don't want to talk about DORA, people want to talk about flow, etc. But then how much reality is different. Because in the end, what we have seen also, quite frankly, when to decide next to enterprise architecture management to jump into value stream management as a growing market, is that many of those discussions start from top down and start from the business side. And I believe what we have clearly seen in our very own journey is that you need to start from the bottom. You need to start from the engineer and meet engineers to some extent where they are. And yes, in the end, you want to go down and say, hey, please support what you have in, please understand what you have in your support, how many tickets you're getting, and please understand what the customer success colleagues are talking when they're talking about NPS or monthly active users and all those things. But often it's about, and DORA is a perfect example here. If you step by step help them start in their world, then you can level up and raise confidence to go into what is my business impact. And the other thought, which I find really, really interesting, is how this discipline of enterprise architecture management and value stream management converges right now. Because if I talk to our most mature enterprise architects, they are not like in the topic of, hey, what is my application landscape and is it GDPR conform, etc. They are about how can I drive innovation? How can I drive innovation for the business in there? And then product IT is all of a sudden not like a sidekick, but it's one of the topics that people want to address in there. If they are in an insurance company, when product IT is something delivering for their own business, or if they are in a software company where they're actually building software. And yes, it's a very bottom-up way to think about value stream management, but again, linking technology to what the enterprise architect understands from a business side is the starting point. And I do believe that in the end, value stream optimization is obviously not a tool process. It's something where people meet in a whiteboard and have a very, very advanced discussion. Now, tools like our can support a discussion like this based on mapping, based on discovered information. And there, obviously, the topic of KPIs and end-to-end thinking is important, but also the topic of just understanding what's out there.
Well, so, and this is why I want to ask those questions, because we very much in the BIL-T have these database, but effectively the techniques for both development value streams. We have a question, and the question comes from Ankur Kumar, but it is metrics, the number of metrics growing, right? So you've got SAFe, Accelerate, TOGAF, DORA. You've got well architected sort of with, and then you've got cloud based metrics. Then you've got objectives, KPIs being a little different than objectives, capabilities, services, domain boundaries. Most importantly, all that translates back to somebody saying, yes, I will spend X number of euro or dollars or yen or whatnot on this change as an investment, and being able to say that that was a good investment. This goes into continuous experimentation too, where we get into A/B testing and things of that nature. So I guess in the bit about what we've said is, this is a job for the architect, right? This is why we have architects and engineers, is to be bottom up. There's a reason we have software architects and business architects, and that's to have business value stream focused delivery with chief architects helping to guide, right? So great. But what I want to know is, what are the competencies and how does your tool help with that in the sense of the translation? Because I have to stand in front of somebody and say, no, our downtime, our mean time to recovery is directly translatable to $1 million in investment.
Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously,
right?
This is
gimme.
I mean, obviously, this is a dream, and the reality is that this is a dream. We observe many customers right now from the business side, where you can think about SAFe like what you want, where again it gives you a language to think about things. But what we often see is that this fundamental question about breaking down silos is the first topic, and then it's about like step-by-step advancing on the KPI level. And this is where we are investing in very, very heavily to, for example, help customers from a technical side to say, what is this service used for product perspective? And you can automate it by AWS tags and Kubernetes labels, etc. Just bringing these things together, first of all. And all of a sudden, you have very well-skilled people from the business side thinking about SAFe and thinking about money in the end, and very skilled people from the technology side meeting.
Yeah, but these are special skills, right? I mean, I'm sorry, I founded a podcast called The Argument. So you have to understand, I am built to just throw a wrench in what you're saying. Okay, those are competencies though, and this is a very specific, so I can have a business person, and by the way, there is no such thing as a business person, right? There's marketing guy, there's a finance lady, there's a salesperson, none of which have ever written a line of code. They wouldn't know the difference between mean time between failure and not being able to get a cup of coffee in most cases, right? So, but my engineers can't speak the other language. Again, we've identified a set of value methods and a set of value stream thinking and a set of objectives and a set and investment planning and a set of competencies that I don't see in the average coder, right? We get a lot of that. So again, I wonder where you're at with that. I can get a business person and a technology person in a room any day, and they're going to sit there and go, this is delicious coffee. Do we have chicken sandwiches? Because no idea what the other one's saying.
Yeah. I would maybe give you an opinionated view on this, and I don't.
This is my favorite kind.
don't think it's too, or maybe it is representative, but we aligned in the last days with 2 manufacturing companies which are in the great situation to have, I would call, a modern enterprise architect in place. And the two concrete examples are the one architect, he managed to get buy-in from business side and also get buy-in from a technology side by introducing a mini process to say, when do we use citizen developers and when do we use professional developers? In the end, he managed to not condemn citizen development. It's there. It's one way to think about problem, but managed to objectify it a bit, to say, hey, great, we don't want to get into your way there, but we want to give you some input whether the way you're going with Power Apps is the right way. And then we want to like have maybe a checklist to talk about scalability and all the other things, or maybe talk about reuse. And the other example is an enterprise architect which has a very trusted relation with their product IT in a hardware and software product driven department, who managed to go away from I will supply you the infrastructure in let me work with you what is the best way, whether cloud, whether again self-hosted or something is the best way. So one way to think about this in a large companies is, hey, this is a fantastic chance for enterprise architects. In a small company, I mean, this is my job as a product leader also every day, to engage with marketing and sales and then go back to development and like translate. So I do agree, just throwing like our head of marketing with an engineer into the room won't save it.
So as much challenge as I gave you, I want to say the Bitterbuck is very opinionated about bottom-up architecture as well. That the connected architecture organization, in fact, all of them working together. So your business architects can be very value stream focused, your software architects can be very engineering focused, and the metrics that we decide on as an organization are really fundamental. So I mean, the big applause on that, because we are really pushing value stream based architecture. It's coming up in our chief architect forums with the largest, with Fortune 100 chief architects saying we need a new way to organize. With the top down isn't working. We've even gone so far in the Bitterbuck as to say that enterprise architect down to lower architects is not a working method. So thank you so much. That was, I think, was a great presentation. I'd really love to dig into it with you further. Please make sure to send us your presentation. We want to make sure these are available to all Iasa fully paid members. Okay, so just as a note for everybody who's going to ask, because we get this one every hour, presentations and recordings are available immediately as soon as we process them to all Iasa full members. We launched the presentations on our YouTube channel, or excuse me, the recordings go to our YouTube channel, but presentation downloads are available to members only. So thank you very much, Dominique. That was just absolutely fantastic. I really, really like that, because it was the closest I've seen, and I know it's tough on you, but it was the closest I've seen to really connecting what I read in a wonderful article a long time ago, which was about connecting mean time between to recover to an actual business metric. And it is the hardest part. So you really, really did a great job of that.
Thanks so much. And for the audience also, thanks. You find me on LinkedIn, feel free to reach out.